안녕하세요. 시온TV입니다. 오늘은 강경화 외교부 장관이 프랑스 방송과 진행한 인터뷰 내용을 전해드리려고 합니다. 지난번 BBC 방송과 인터뷰에서도 세계인들에게 강한 인상을 남겼었는데요. 이번엔 한국이 세계적인 주목을 받을 정도로 완벽에 가까운 대응을 할 수 있었던 배경에 대해서 이전 정부와는 달라진 점을 강조하며 또 한 번 주목을 받고 있습니다. 지금부터 한번 들어보시겠습니다.
Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. Our guest today is South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa. She joins us via satellite from Seoul. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Mrs. Minister, South Korea has earned plaudits from around the globe for its tackling of the coronavirus pandemic. The number of infections dropped from 900 a day in late February to less than 30 per day. This without imposing any lockdowns and even holding legislative elections this week. What has South Korea done differently?
Let me first begin by expressing my solidarity and appreciation for all the medical staff and the frontline workers who are fighting this unprecedented health challenge around the world. I think the work has been remarkably valiant, but also very difficult, and that has certainly been the case in our country as well. My heartfelt sympathies to the victims and the families who've suddenly lost loved ones in this crisis. Governments are fighting this around the world, and so as government, our solidarity with the governments in the midst of this. As you say, things have stabilized here in my country. The numbers of new infections are now under 50, and that's been a continuing trend during the past week. So yes, we have acted quickly and preemptively, and that is not just our philosophy, but is a reflection of our recent experience. You may know that in 2014, we had a terrible ferry boat accident where we lost 304 lives in the midst of a very inept response by the government at the time. And that has been a collective trauma to all Korean people. And the following year, in 2015, we had a MERS outbreak that lasted for about 3 months, didn't affect that many people, but was very highly fatal. And I think the government's reaction then was also initially very intransparent and dismissive, and so heavily criticized. It came around, responded, and contained. So this government has been very determined to be prepared when disaster strikes. We may not be able to prevent disasters from striking, but we can do a lot to prepare so that we can minimize the human suffering and contain the socioeconomic consequences. So from the very beginning, we were of a mindset and a government machinery ready to act quickly and preemptively, and that is what we have done. And being uncompromisingly transparent and open in the process.
Right. We saw Japan declare a state of emergency, and you've chosen not to impose any lockdown. There are strict social distancing, as they're known, guidelines that have been prolonged. Could you consider harsher measures if you see that indeed the virus is coming back through people coming in or people being reinfected?
As I said, our principle has been openness. Obviously, the virus travels with people. So to contain the virus, you have to contain people movement. And you can do this from two different approaches. You either respect the freedom of movement of people and make exceptions for those who need to be contained, the patients certainly, but for the close context, or you do the opposite way. You crack down on the movement and you make an exception for the travel. Our approach has been from the very beginning, by default, respecting the people's right to freedom of movement, and then to implement measures where necessary and proportionate to the needs to manage the risk. And now, because the risk factor comes with the people coming from overseas into the countries, we have placed all travelers coming from outside the country to 14 days of self-isolation, either in their homes or in government-sponsored facilities for monitoring and testing if necessary, and then hospitalization if necessary. So our measures have adapted to the evolving nature of this challenge, but the principle has been to preserve that openness, but we have managed. I don't think the idea of a lockdown or blockade would be acceptable to our public. Even at the height of our crisis, when this was exploding in the southern city of Daegu and Gyeongbuk province, where numbers were climbing by the hundreds, as you say, to a maximum of 900 per day, even then we did not impose a blockade. We strongly advised people to not to go to crowded places, to stay home, but we did not impose mandatory travel bans. People were still free to travel in and out of the city even at that time. The idea of a blockade would be completely a mandatory blockade would be contrary to our principle of openness.
Do you agree with President Trump that the World Health Organization has been too slow and even too lenient with China?
For Korea, the WHO has been a very collaborative and very helpful partner throughout this challenge. We communicate very closely and we support its work. WHO is the technical agency at the lead of this global health crisis response, and it should be supported. There will be lots of lessons learned at some point when we take stock, but we need to support the lead agency as we try to come together in the midst of this crisis.
Just very quickly, your neighbor, North Korea, claims it has no case at all. Is it a reliable assertion?
That is its official position. I think we need to take that with some grain of salt, but it is an intransparent, closed country where information is very difficult to get. But we watch very closely on the developments with the information that we are able to garner through its official media outlets. But we will see. And we stand prepared. My government is, we really think that a cooperation between South and North Korea in the health sector, especially at a time of this contagious disease, is necessary. We have made that offer, but so far we've not received any positive response.
Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa, thank you very much for being with us here on France 24 from Seoul and telling us about how your country is fighting coronavirus. Thank you for watching this interview.
이상 시온TV였습니다.